Want to let Sharon get all the way on and then rock it all. Welcome, Sharon.
Hi, Nate.
All right, let's rock, guys. We've got a ton of videos. You guys that are new on the call, every first Thursday of the month, I think I missed last week, we're gonna do just open to all coaches. So if you guys ever want to join on those Thursdays, you're more than welcome. And if you ever want to text me or whoever told you to come jump on the call, a video of you moving or members moving, we'll use them on the call. So feel free to send stuff in if you're going to be joining those. There, third one, let's rock and roll. So, you guys that have been on the call, we look at movement, we correct movement, we talk about maybe some mobility issues, stuff like that. I want to also start to build and start to identify what the movement theme is that we're firing, right? So just for an example, if someone's squatting and their knees are collapsing in, like we know, push the knees out and have that correction, but then also being like, that's posterior chain engagement that we're using. The reason why I want to start to just throw those little things in is there's a lot of people on this call that are either prepping for level 2, getting ready for level 3, and then eventually someone else is going to go for level 4. Those themes are really important to be able to identify, because it's not just identifying the fault, but identifying sometimes the root causes of what they want us. So we'll start to just add that in, and I'll help out in the first couple of weeks a lot, and then kind of have you guys start to do more of that. All right, we got a power snatch starting off today. Could have been a better video angle. I played a couple times. I've got 2 real quick things.
He's always had really nice hip extension when he cleans and snatches. Just remembering seeing him at the gym.
Hunter does do a good job with that. By the way, Hunter's a dad now for you guys that know as of last week.
Oh, is he? Oh, I gotta text him.
Yeah. Quincy is his daughter's name now.
Good for them.
All right.
I would say the landing, he's landing pretty toesy, so he shift back a little bit. So probably went up on his toes a little bit. Yeah, how he shift and jump forward.
That shift and that jump forward and that toesiness are related to something else that's happening in the So really there's cool. A stat.
Well, it's not related.
Let's look at that real quick. I don't think early pull. Let's just check on it. The angling is not perfect for what I'm seeing here. But there's a good giveaway. He's got tension. Like, I don't love that arm bend. He's a pretty stubborn one when it comes to that. I would like his elbows to be straight, because when he does extend, you see how his arm's straighten here. So as much as that person may argue with you that like they've done it forever, he is losing power. That's like a shock absorber when that arm goes from tense to straight. So I wouldn't call it an early pull, Issa, but there is an issue with, like, he gets extended really well, but I don't like that break. So he's not pulling early, but that's what you're seeing there.
Yeah, is he bouncing the barbell off his hip?
He's going too fast in his setup. And so his chest is too forward when he starts the movement.
Both of you guys are right on that. So let's go set up, and then let's go with what Elise said about the bouncing it off his hip. So I don't mind that he's a little more dynamic and gets his hands on, takes a breath, and then sets up quick. I'm okay with that. But what I want to see in the athlete is that when they get here, that they are in position that I want to be in. It's not egregious. Like, I don't think I'm super upset with like his lumbar curve being maintained, but those shoulders, would you say they're down and back?
No.
not at all. Like he's definitely rounded forward. So I think that slowing that setup down, making sure those get there is going to be a big one. A lot of times with the athlete, they, even if they get a little tension and they're not all the way there, that lat softness is going to negatively affect the bar path, right? Because that bar will start to pull them forward. So we need to get that really locked in. And it's not just shoulders down and back, it's also that sweeping, pressing down motion that we want to have in lifting. So nailed that. And then what Elise said, when he comes up, he kind of maybe smacks his hips into the bar rather than having a brush and an uppercut straight up. And he does, like if you look right there, that bar is pretty away from his body. Now the body obviously is going to be behind the bar. He needs to work around it, but he does get loopy, and video angle's tough, but the telltale sign is in his receive. Watch how wobbly he gets. See how that's all shaky? That's because 215 pounds just swung around, and he's now got to refine the balance when it gets there.
Question,
Versus
so
that,
so
Go
that
ahead,
will
Jose.
be balance about the frontal plane or midline stabilization?
Because
What do
he
you-
because he swoops it, and that bar literally, it's not egregious, but he has like a little of a rainbow. That's going to be balance of the frontal plane. Now, your head is in a really good spot because a lot of times when you see this wobbliness that happens that he has, sometimes it is going to be a loss of midline stabilization, and you see people lose balance. You see it a lot on push jerks. Bar goes straight up, but then they're super wobbly because midsection moves, it gets exacerbated the further away it gets from midsection when that bar's overhead. So yeah,
I have a
balance of
question.
the frontal plane, and then could be midsection if that frontal plane's good. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay, sorry to interrupt. I do also notice that
Interrupt.
due to all to the things that we've been discussing. So I've noticed a lot of Olympic lifters sometimes do have a forward jump or sometimes do have a backward jump. But I do notice in this lifter, he does not move his feet at all. So
That's another
there's no
problem.
displacement of his landing, which he has to then force the shift to make it work for his foot position, as opposed to displacing and having a stable receiving position.
And that's a really good point. So I know you guys have coached somebody, or maybe you're guilty of this, and the feet doesn't leave the floor. And I'm not saying like I need a huge jump from him, but Brian's 100% right. What happens when we don't get that moment in time that we get a foot shuffle? What ends up happening to Olympic lifts? This is kind of a tough question.
You lose
You can think
power
of-
because you're not jumping.
You're
All right.
losing. I don't know about power, because I mean his extension is pretty damn good. Like I'm very happy with that. Like he's got a pretty good triple extension happening. He's gonna lose speed, and the reason that he's gonna end up losing speed is, think of Olympic weightlifting. We're not pulling the bar all the way to in place up here. When we do a jerk, we're not necessarily pressing the bar all the way up. Our body is going down and around this snatch. On a clean, our body is going down and around. If I am actively pulling on this bar and my feet leave the floor, what am I actually doing? I'm pulling myself under that barbell. So that's where you see people get really fast. To Brian's point, if you start to look at like some of these elite Olympic weightlifters, sometimes their takeoff and their extension is not quick. But then once that extension's finished and those feet move, they're like freaking lightning under that barbell. They have to be, because the bar doesn't get very high. So if your feet never leave, you're never actually going to pull yourself under like we should. And by pulling ourselves under like we should, we're actually moving faster than gravity, which is what we need to do before gravity catches up and pushes that barbell down. Does that make sense?
One more point. Yeah, one more point. I think we also rob ourselves of our maximum power if we keep our feet connected to the floor. Because I think just for like, even if we're coaching this moment, for the athlete, we tell them to like, in layman's terms, jump or like hit this head your ceiling. So that maximum extension, if we keep our feet in the same place, I think you're robbing yourself of your max extension possible.
Maybe that
So when
last
people
little bit of percent.
yeah, that like last little bit, because when you do leave the ground, essentially you're shifting your place in time and space and pulling yourself under, et cetera, et cetera. But by keeping your toes on the ground, you're like just this much potential left, and that could be the make or break between hitting a heavier lift.
I agree. My go-to cue is literally the two that Brian just said. I tell people to jump, like in its simplest form. Olympic weightlifting is jumping. Or if they don't get that, I tell them the next thing: hit your head on the ceiling. What's another way? If like let's say those two things didn't work, give me a couple more cues. What's another verbal cue you could use?
Get
Stand up
tall.
fast, stand up fast.
Yeah, get tall. Stand up fast could be a good one. Let's say verbal didn't work. What is your next go-to?
Put your
Visual.
hand, yeah.
Visual, and then I would go
Tactile.
tactile. Yeah, especially if we're like in a Metcon, like I'm gonna just get right in front of them and demo a very bad one, and then demo a very clear one, and then I'll go tactile. With the tactile, I'll probably go shoulder before I go head. That's just my preference, but I wouldn't say either is wrong. Just trying to be more sensitive before someone ends up smacking my hand. Really good points. You guys have anything else on Hunter? I believe this was a PR on the right side. I think you add those last little couple things though, you get a little more tension in the setup, you clean up that bar path, and then if I can just slip the magazine under the feet. If he gets those things off the floor and finishes that shuffle, I think his PR turns into 220, maybe 225, not 215. You know he's strong. Let's go. Let's do gymnastics. Sorry, I have to find it real quick, guys. I'm filming it on here. There it is. Just for quick context before we go, Gina's doing like a kipping ring muscle up drill, but she's adding in some pulls. So she's working toward like a kipping hip to ring feel. First thoughts. Remember, it doesn't have to be bad. It could be good stuff too. We want to cue the good as well. Get that
She gets her
positive
hips
reinforcement.
really high.
Yeah, does a pretty good job overall.
Yeah, the backswing on the last, like the first one was a little shallow, so I shouldn't get up as high. But the last three, she got that nice backswing using the
Yeah,
hips
right. Like this one.
Yeah,
So lower. Yeah, I really like that she's getting like if you took her off and you were super strong and she let go of the reins and you laid her on the floor, like now we're actually starting to like resemble that Superman. So that's something I always think about when I'm coaching these. Like if you took them and just laid them, does it look like our foundational movement of a Superman in a hollow on the floor? If it doesn't, then we know we need work. It's a really just easy thing to look at. Overall, I'm super stoked with these. She does a couple things really, really well, I think. One of them being that she allows herself to really like grow that kip. And if you notice her initiation, remember when we kip on the rings, kipping on the rings, the initiation is going to come from a lot of core and low body, which is the opposite of kipping on a pull-up bar. It's going to be shoulder and then core. Does a really, really good job with that. She also does a really good job initiating those little pulls. She takes her time. She has a slight bend. It grows. And then the last one, she gets even higher. Super stoked with that. And you can see how she kind of floats. That's what we're looking for in ring muscle ups, and especially this drill. She balances that frontal plane as well.
I can
Go
see
ahead,
that she
Brian.
has a really good understanding of how to incorporate the hip extension in these kipping motions, because that's where the floating comes from. So it's really exciting to see that. That's like, just continue to use that powerful hip, and then that's what's going to be the connecting factor.
Like 100% would say, like, the skill of this, she's got it, which is, I think, sometimes the hardest part. And now it's just going to be developing strength and maybe like a turnover of it. So yeah, spot on with that. Let's go now to like a cue. Like, let's say she's doing this. What can we do better?
I think she can keep the rings closer when she brings it up. If they feel like they're really spread out, try to bring knuckle to knuckle.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that. She get to the turnover later, it's going to be like wide.
Yeah, like spread.
Oh.
I think so. For the point of the drill, I'm very happy with it. But I do see like what you guys are saying. I think that could be something that we chase toward it. Like, she's almost like getting ready to hug herself more here versus, it's not bad though. Like, I wouldn't say she's flailing out terrible.
I want to say that to create the idea of tension, her first couple of kip swings are like from a complete dead hang. So what something I've coached athletes is, that first jump up is that slight pull up. You're already activating your lats, and then you swing into your first Superman. So right off the bat, you're creating a ton of tension. But with her first jump up, it's just like a flop like a fish. So it takes her 2 to 3 times to truly get to that really good point up at the top. Whereas in a Metcon, you want to be able to be tight from the very first setup and go.
Yeah, definitely.
So I would,
that little pull, I think, is a really nice hack. Especially if we start to look at like strengths too. Like, it really does engage people well. I think with her jump up, something she can add to that is this initial jump. You know how we do the bad cheerleader and the person gets really piked on these rings? Like, let's do it even more. Like, get aggressive and over exaggerating with getting these feet a lot higher, because you can get these feet higher. It's like with Elise, which we just said, that first backswing like is heading there, but it's not really there yet. If we can pike up and get some of more of that tension like Brian's talking about, but have these feet elevated more, it's going to allow her to get into these backswings that are more like the second one. And if she can do that off the first one, then boom, there's the first muscle up, or like a stronger pull off that first rep, rather than how she swings and kind of loses one. So I think all of that is a really fast way, I think, to improve it quickly. That being said, too, when people are getting their first muscle ups, like most of us do swing around, it is kind of a little bit of a learning curve that I think will happen with like the feel of the person on the rings, and it's okay for them to do it. But we know what direction we need to head in for at least. I got one more small one. I'll give her a fist bump too for having that like pseudo false grip walk kipping. That's a great job. That's a tough one.
I was gonna ask. No, go ahead, Isa.
Okay, I was just gonna say to try to straighten the legs and tighten them a little bit more.
Yeah, I would add there. Something I find, and I see it more with women than men. Men are usually a little tighter. We have some history of bench press going on, so we hit that tightness. Versus like women don't always hit it. Is sometimes in the arches they get like limp almost, and there's I almost want to call it like a slack there rather than that tension that like Brian is talking about. So I would say, yeah, try to tighten those, like really squeeze the quads, tighten the legs up, and even in the belly. Like if you were doing these hips and you had like the slight mind frame that someone might poke me in the stomach, like even though we have to kind of relax the abs to go into that hyperextension, I still want to have some kind of tension in them, so we have that snap back and that whip from when she goes into this big arch. There's so much tension that she almost needs to get out of it fast, and that will speed up that and give her more power for the pull and then eventually the pull muscle out. So yeah, adding the feet together, but like making sure like she's becoming more of an advanced athlete, that she understands why that's so important.
A
Elise,
drill
what were
that
you gonna
I've
say?
done in the past. Oh, sorry.
Elise and then Brian, you go.
Nope, Issa took it.
Oh, same
Issa said
thing.
Yep.
Pat yourselves on the back. Brian, go ahead.
Sorry for interrupting. What I always go back to the level 1 kipping drill where you have your partner having the 2 arms in front and in back of the athlete and having them tactile touch your with from the dead hang, touch their chest to your arm, touch their back, because that really does show the active gaps in the cap. So just encouraging Gina to like remember what that feels like when she does her first couple of starting kips, is that retraction and that activation is already there to start. Because
That's a great
I also
drill.
noticed that when yeah, I love it. I teach it whenever there's like a time for it. There's a pull-up section. But also if you notice that her swing is super impressive, her backswing is super curved, but I think it's because of the lack of activation in her lats.
Oh,
Like
for
her
sure.
head is all the way through.
Everything just
And
goes
so, like,
limp, kind of.
So if you can practice your really strict hollow arch, that small kip back and forth, that controlled, you'll have less of a backswing, but more of a command on your upper body, ready to go into your front swing. And so that's just like the difference of being aware of, just because you're swinging more doesn't mean you're gonna achieve that activation. So I think it's going to be just going back to those basic drills to help them understand that actually less is better.
Which is perfect for Gina because she's been hammering some of like that really basic stuff. So it does go right with it. I have 2 thoughts coming off that. If you think about an arch on the floor or you think about a hollow on the floor, and we know what that should look like, right? All of our joints are open. None of our joints should be closed. If you are going to keep those joints open, and then I was going to walk over to you and manually try to manipulate you to bend your elbows, to bend your knees, what would happen? You would tense up and you would flex your quads. You would flex your triceps, all of those things. Nothing changes from that to going onto those dynamic, the rings, or if you're kipping on a bar and stuff like that. So if you ever think of when you see an athlete that has a bend, I'm just using my arm because you can see it, but most of the time, where do we see that? It's going to be in knees. You know that muscle's not active because it cannot be active if they're bending, basically. My second thought is that drill that Brian's talking about. That I love that drill. I used it last night. We were doing some toes to bar work, and I had people partner up and kip like that. With that drill on a bar, it would be a much tighter window, right? Versus on the rings, because we know the kip is a little different. It would be a little wider, and even getting creative and using the feet. So she would have to hard hit like a foam roller on the front and the back. She's probably need 2 people for it. Would be a good one too. She needs the tightness in her midsection, but we need to be able to create that momentum there as well. The drill, if you've never used it, it's a fun one to do in class, and it keeps people engaged because they're partnering and they're using each other, rather than if you're doing a kip swing and there's a group 1 and a group 2, and you have that group 2 that's like kind of off in space doing whatever, and they're supposed to maybe be doing something, but they're not. It keeps everybody like wrangling the tasks together. All right, what's next? You guys want to go gymnastic or weightlifting? Cool. Let's stay on the gymnastic roll real quick, and then we'll go back to weight. Solid feedback, guys. Hold on, I'm looking for it. We're gonna look at yours, at least that you sent. If I can find it. Yeah, I agree. Can you guys see it? Oh, I found it. All right, so Elise is working on same thing, really. We're just going from the dynamic rings to more of a bar muscle up here. So just for some context for you guys that haven't seen, we've seen some really nice improvement in what she's been sending. So initially, when we were lifting from like a hip to bar or like a chest to bar pull up, she would pull, she would get high enough for it, but be in a complete, very over exaggerated arch to reach. And we've been working on her getting behind the bar without having that like need to arch. The last one got a little funky. We'll ignore that one for now. What's some initial thoughts?
I don't know if this would work or be right, but I feel like I stand a little bit further behind the bar before I start.
So
She like steps into it and kind of gets underneath it.
my initial thought was there, like similar thinking, I would say. I don't mind that she steps into it and then goes for the jump. Like I'm okay with that. Like no matter where someone's starting, I want them to be in a position to where they're comfortable getting on that bar and having a good grip rather than trying to change that and they like miss a little bit. Or like I know you guys have been in the moment where you jump up and your grip is crooked and then it just like mind fucks you for that whole set. So I'd rather her get into a really strong grip position because at the end of the day, if someone goes to do any drill and it's about to be a dumpster fire or a beautiful one and they lose their grip because it wasn't good, it doesn't matter. Like that's a disaster, right? But my head is in the same spot with like the approach. I think when she jumps up, she could just jump up more into an L so she gets more out of the arch. I do think there's a little momentum lost with that. That's initial, well, not initial thought. That's one of two initial thoughts. My other one is I'm very happy that she gets here and she's not going to that old habit of arching, right? So there needs to be more done there.
So just a little dynamic with that too. I was really afraid I was gonna hit my head
That
because of the
pull-up
wall
bars,
back there.
yeah, I don't like that pull-up
But-
bar. It used to freak me
but-
out.
But clearly I'm not even close, but that's also kind of, I guess it kind of forced me into that more hollow position up there too, because
So it was an accidental tactile cue kind of for you.
yes, basically.
Actually, when I saw it, that reminded me of a video of a level 3 that I just watched a few days ago, and he was like, "Oh, you are used to do big swings. What if they put you in a competition in front of a wall? Have you tried it?" And he was doing bar muscle up in front of a wall like that. So it was like,
Huh.
what if they change the things? Can you change
Don't-
it? So
Jose, don't let me forget that point. Because I have a story that kind of goes exactly with that, and it does give that good example as well. So don't like whatever you do when we move on, be like, remember the level 3 guy. So I'm very, very happy with her press down, right? I can see she's closing the shoulder angle and she's not even really bending the elbows. It's got a very slight bend, but because she closes that shoulder and presses down so well, you can see the difference in elevation from when she's hanging to there. So we've got half the range of motion starting to be accomplished here, which is a great sign. I chatted with Elise a little bit about this. He was like, I don't feel like I'm getting the help from my hips though. That's correct, right, Elise?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I would do is we've kind of broken the habit now of as soon as she gets behind the bar, reaching and arching. So I know she's starting to develop this good habit of pressing down and being more hollow. Right here in this position, right before she hits this apex, because once she's hit the back of the apex, what's happening? Gravity is now going to be doing its job. So if she tries to do this there, she's missed it. It's not gonna help. So the moment before she hits that apex, I have no issue with this hollow position, her having a piked tip. That's gonna help her, right? We need to now take that piked tip and give her a little bit of what she used to do, and we need to throw the hip and squeeze the butt after the pull-up line. If she does it here, it's lost. She's gonna feel no power from it because it's over. So the timing of this needs to be this same habit of pressing, and now we pop, and that elevates more. Does that make sense? So Elise, you're gonna take exactly what you did here, and you're just gonna sprinkle a little bit of what you used to do on it without going into that arch. Because I've seen you pop the hip and get up there. I know you have that. Let the timing and let your habit of the skill of pressing come together now. You guys understand, like, you get what I mean by that? There's also, you'll see some athletes that do it kind of extreme and it works really well. And it's not this perfect gymnastically sound bar muscle up, but you'll even see them when they're going into the swing and they're getting back coming out of the arch, they'll throw their knees at the bar. And the reason why they do it is if you throw your knees up at the bar here, it makes a bigger pike and gives them more to squeeze their butt with to pop the hip at the bar. So that's a nice little trick you can use in your bar muscle up. That's not perfect gymnastics, but will give you a ton of power to get up there. Anybody else want to throw anything on this before I tell the quick story?
Yeah, I do want to add a couple things. I think just to piggyback back on that last cue you gave, throwing the knees to the bar helps athletes understand how to move behind the bar to then flip over for that bar muscle up. So just adding in like I've seen terrific like
that's a good point.
Association.
It does shift the person back.
A lot of athletes will tend to swing and then try to, if this is the bar, they try to go vertically into the bar muscle up, and that's where the chicken wing comes from. But when they throw their knees to the bar, it moves them behind, and they're actually almost eliminating the chicken wing altogether.
And I think especially with how like Elise started, that was very much like she would go straight up almost rather than you have to have that little back around. So that's a good, I always used it for the hips, but now that you're saying it and thinking about it, yeah, it definitely would shift their torso, getting it back. So yeah, I like that for that reason too.
And then
just another tool in the toolbox.
Layering that in eventually after throwing your knees to the bar, then having the tactile cue of having the pad so your feet can touch
and nail it,
still pushing them behind the bar. So just layering, but not all at once.
Yeah, so definitely using a cue like that. Like if I'm gonna knee the bar, like it's gonna put them into this really big pike, and like I don't necessarily want to live there forever. I do want to continue to strive to be very, very efficient and very, hollow arch gymnastically sound, because then it's going to flow even better. And it gets a lot less like jerky on the hands. So you'll even see less rips the better you get it, stuff like that. So even though you may use a cue like that, that's not this absolute perfect mechanic and it works well. Continue to do what Brian's doing, and like we still want to take that person, or if it's ourselves, and get to the point to where we are chasing that perfect bar muscle. Jose's story, when he was talking about the level 3, if they put it, what if you went to a competition and they put you on a bar like that? So when we think about the bar muscle up, we have like the CrossFit bar muscle up, where it's a very tight hollow and arch. The feet don't necessarily always elevate super high, and that person just generates a lot of power and they're able to do it. And then you have what you see gymnasts come in and they do a glide kick, to where they almost like swing, their feet get really high and then they teeter over the bar. CrossFit becomes a problem because if your feet go over that bar, you're no repping your bar muscle up, right? So we can do these like pseudo glide kicks to where our feet drift, we don't allow them to get so high over the bar, and then we kind of teeter over. So you see a lot of athletes do that, and they're doing that constantly for their muscle. there's nothing wrong with it, you know, unless they're a competitor and they are going over the bar. But what I will say is when you watch that person do those, it's a really good skill to have, because someone like me, I don't glide kip at all. I'm very tight on my bar muscle up, but when I fatigue out, having the skill of glide kipping will allow me to continue to get reps. And then on the vice versa, if we have a workout and I'm going up against somebody and it is a competition and I've got a very tight bar muscle up and they've got a glide kip and it sets a 5, I'm gonna smoke them in time on it, even if we both go unbroken. So one's a lot quicker, one's a lot slower because it's a longer kick pattern. So beyond the point of maybe you're gonna end up on a pull-up bar like this and you're not gonna have the space, it's good to develop and practice both of those skills because they will become handy in different times. Does that make sense? All right, let's go back to a barbell. Oh, Justin, I'm going to use this because it's an awesome example. Not a crazy exciting one, but there's just a couple things I want to point out, and he's doing something here that I think is great to do in training that we just easily forget about. We'll ignore this first little bit for a half second because that's not really what it's about. All right, you guys see what he did there? He put the barbell under the J hooks. So he's going against an immovable object. Well, I guess he could squat this really, but right now it's immovable. And if you look at his facial expression, it's very clear he's driving against those J hooks. Am I right, Justin?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. So now I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but I wanted to share it because one, it's an isometric hold, right? And we always think of isometric holds as like gymnastics, L-sits, things like that. But we can do isometrics when it comes to weightlifting, and they can be very, very potent when it comes to gaining and building strength. In weightlifting, it can be particularly fun because we can do them in the areas that we're weak on. So I don't know particularly about Justin, but maybe Justin's weak point in the squat may be the whole of the squat. So now he's directly addressing that issue, you know, and
That's
you can imagine
exactly what I'm doing here, by the way, Nate, is because I'm so unstable in the bottom of any kind of like squat snatch, anything that gets me into the bottom quickly. I don't have the stability. So this is like the remedy.
like helping with that. So yeah, you can address like direct weak points like that for your athletes. You don't need to do a ton of these. Like I've seen prescriptions of 3 sets of 3 reps for 10 seconds. So like it doesn't need to be something you spend all of this time on for it to be effective. But something I just want to point out, when he's driving, it's very clear he's driving here, nothing changes. Like he maintains his midline, the knees don't collapse in. Like obviously you can see him wiggling and he's trying to maintain those positions. That was one of the things I just wanted to point out, that if you do use some of this stuff, and it is really good to use, if you're giving it to an athlete or yourself, make sure that nothing changes when it comes to the points of support. This was something I used to program a lot for my like powerlifting clients, is I would have them deadlift against an immovable object. But eventually I stopped doing it if I couldn't be there watching, because I was finding that people would be driving against some pins and then you see their back starting to round, and it's they're not aware of their positioning, or they just don't care. So Justin, I just wanted to give you a quick shout out on that video. That was a really good job. And just like a refresher for us that that's a training tool that we can use.
Can I add something real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just really, really like this drill because, and especially for someone like Justin, who is hyper flexible, really, because he's a yogi, addressing the bottom of squats for hyper flexible athletes who don't understand maintaining the tension at the bottom of a squat, they just bottom out, which can also be very unsafe. So having just like, this is what, you know, you should feel this tension throughout the whole squat And what a perfect example. So I just wanted to shout out, like, what a great drill to teach those
That's
people.
that's a really good point too. It's usually a yogi that comes in. Every once in a while, I get somebody that's a dancer that'll be like that as well. But that would be an awesome way to get them to feel tension and understand that. Because I'm sure you guys have come across this when you're coaching somebody that is like hyper flexible and it just comes easy, like getting them to not arch their back in a squat and things like that. Like that, it's kind of tough to get them to grasp it. All right, back to a barbell. I think this is either a 3-position snatch or a snatch and overhead squat. I don't remember. Ethan's videos are always good. He's a pretty damn good mover, and you really got to lock into some stuff. I have a couple things that I would want to address. There's one I would go with first.
I think even in the high hang, I would say just have more active shoulders a little bit. Kind of keep them pinned down and back a little bit more.
Gain more tension.
Yeah.
Let's stop on those points real quick. There's a lot of movement going, right? Settle before you move, I would say, is part of it too. Because if you watch her shoulders while she moves, she gets there, watch she goes. There's a movement back, they get engaged, but then the movement just keeps going, and it makes me question, like, do they stay there totally? They may not. I don't know. Let's go to the hang.
I will say she's very intentional and thoughtful with her setup. Her shoulders are down and back it's very good. I like what I see just from a initial viewing.
Setups and like the anglings, she does do a good job. So I think there is I think I do maybe agree with you at least. I think she could get more in those shoulders back and down. I don't want to say Issa's shoulders are immobile, but they're also not the most mobile. And like Hunter that we watch snatch is the exact same way. Like those people that have like some of that tightness, they're hard ones to really get to where they'll have tension, but they have more in it, if that makes sense. I'm gonna play it one more time and then I'll share what I see. A lot of the wobbliness is a view, and I don't think it's midline. I don't think she's losing her like tightness.
I think she's just trying to focus on staying in the heels. Am I correct, Issa? You're just really trying to
like feel that.
Yeah.
I don't know if she's still on. So if that's the intention, I think that is a good initial intention. If you watch her initial movement, like this dip and drive could be better. Like I want to see her knees go out and her shoulders stay a little more upright here. Like if she starts to hinge and go down her thigh, then yes, I want to see the shoulder immediately go in front. But if she's going just a true high hang finish where we're scooping that second pull, I'll repost that article in the group. I want to see her be more like a push press drive. You see this different drive and the knees go forward, and then what's the first thing that actually happens? It does go into her toes. So I do think Elise, like, she's probably being cautious of that, but you see tilt forward, and even watch her, she changes direction, like she's good, she's good, she's good, and then same thing here, she immediately starts to shift forward. This barbell is probably getting close to her body weight. We know she needs to have that aggression back, and especially like that lat tension back too. Watch her turnover. This is a hard one to catch for people.
It's a flick and press.
It's a huge flick. And the flick is why she gets a little like wobbly. And it exacerbates in that last one. So you can see my hands, right? On a snatch. The snatch is technically still a press. Don't ever say that to class because someone will just take it way too far and they'll butcher it. But technically it's a press. Like our pull, if I did a strict muscle snatch and I just stood tall and pulled, it would look like this. I would high pull it up. I would rotate and press through, right? What Issa does is she high pulls it up and then she rotates out and around. So like when we're looking at like bar path, it's going straight up and then there's this little flip that happens at the top. A lot of times people like see that and they kind of just let it slide and coaches let it be. When in reality, it should be a straight line because we have this rotation press. Now where that rotation and like press is happening is when her body's going under the bar. So it's in the third pull of that transition. It's a tough one to drill. Just cueing that verbally probably won't work here. I would cue her to probably punch hard and see if just like the thought of punching would help translate it. But I would actually probably take her back to the Bergner warm up. Do you guys know the Bergner warm up, most of you guys? So with the Bergner warm up, I think a lot of times coaches just go through it without the intention, right? And the third one is a high hang muscle snatch. The intention that Bergner wants people to verbally say even, and he does it verbal because people don't do it, is strong turnover and like a punch, right? So I would take it back to that version of that piece of the Bergner warm-up. I would have her just do it with the PVC pipe to start, and I would tactile cue her with either a rig post right in front of her, or I'd hold the PVC pipe where she does a high hang muscle snatch. Going to correct two things. She can't tilt forward anymore. She's going to hit her face on the beam, and she's going to have that motion. If she flicks, she's going to hit the pipe. She's going to hit the beam. So I would just eat that for when you warm up snatch. I'll send you a video of this. I'll put it in the group actually so you can all see it. When you warm it up, do like a couple sets of 5 or a couple sets of 10 just to really drill through that really strong turnover and we start to get rid of that flickiness. It'll give you a lot more speed, but it'll also help a lot with the balance because we no longer have left and right movement of the barbell. We only have north and south of the barbell. That makes sense to you guys? It's one I'm very attuned to because I used to flick my barbell real bad. And I sent a video to one of the Bergner staff one time, and I was like, "Get me on that one," and that's what they got. Anything else? Overall, pretty good movement. Little just tweaks, I would say. I have a little one for her pull off the floor. One more time. You guys see what I see? It's super slight. There's
Blocking out at the bottom.
Like here, you mean?
No, in receiving position, just having that strong press.
Yeah, I don't think she has. There needs to be a lot more punch and a lot more like active shoulder there for sure. I think the the slight flickiness, like she doesn't have a really good balance of the frontal plane because of it, and that's what fucks her up on that like punch. When she takes off, watch her hit. You see how there's just a little slight forward inclination, and the hip starts the movement, and then the shoulders go. I want to see the shoulders and the hip start to go at the same time. If you do that really, really well, especially if you're doing reps or like reps of a clean pull or a snatch pull, you'll feel your quads start to also blow up. It's not just a hamstring move, it's a total leg. So if you did have a shirt on here and you had a logo on your shirt, if I was standing right in front of you, imagine that I need to be able to see that logo at all times. That's a good one to think about as you're going. So yeah, just want to make sure I was talking to you about it. All right, guys. We're just about at an hour. If we do another one, it could potentially snowball. So we'll call the day here. You guys have anything to add? Wins? Thoughts? We have our plan for Tuesday's calls coming up. We're going to look at injuries and dealing with injured athletes next Tuesday. So I'll put an article in. You guys, that was first time on the call. Thanks for joining us. And Brian, never have to be sorry for chiming in. I like when people chime in. Usually that's Justin's job. He does a good job. But yeah, anytime you guys want to make statements, questions, or just be silent with your camera off, all good with me. Other than that, I will see you guys on Tuesday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Really appreciate it.
See you guys. Have a good weekend.
Good to see you, Brian. Talk to you guys soon.